Hi, it's Roger Hamilton here with a coronavirus crisis special from lockdown in Warsaw, Poland. I'm in our library at the moment. I'm going to share with you on this video the top 3 predictions from the crisis. And I know what you're thinking. The last thing I need right now is more predictions. Why should you listen to me? And the answer is you don't need to listen to me, but I have spent the last 10 years focusing at the future, especially exponential technologies and what is the result of following an exponential curve where things go way out of the ability for us to actually conceive of what's coming in the future unless we start thinking exponentially as well. And with that, I've helped many different companies around the world to be able to grow their businesses exponentially. We've grown our own business exponentially. In fact, we were only 9 months away from our IPO on the New York Stock Exchange when this crisis came. And for those of you following this story, well, I'm going to be sharing at the end of this video exactly what the next steps are. And if you haven't been following the story and you'd like to follow what we're doing through this crisis, then click the subscribe button, click a like, and I would love for you to be on this journey with us as well. And the other reason that I really believe that it's worth listening to what I have to share is I might share some new perspectives about how you can grow your business or your cash flow in what are seriously challenging times right now. I have probably since 3 weeks ago been sharing, since the crisis really hit visibility in the West, the predictions of what I would see coming. And I'm actually going to show you on my Facebook page. I definitely recommend, if you'd like to follow the things I'm writing as well as what I'm sharing here, just go click on the Facebook page, follow the page on the updates I'm giving every several days as well. But just to give you an idea, if we actually were to go back to where things were sitting way back in, 19th of March, which seems like a long time ago. 19th of March, at that point, it said what to expect next, the exponential curves of COVID-19 cases in Italy, USA, UK. And you could see here that I was saying that the UK and US would all go into lockdown within 2 weeks. That was 2 weeks ago. What is really interesting was at the time, there was quite a bit of response from people saying, well, I don't think that's going to happen, because obviously 2 weeks ago, which is a lifetime ago, it didn't really seem like there was actually that much of an urgency. And of course, UK is closed down. 90% of all of the US is now closed down, and it's just a matter of time before it's 100%. And that's simply because when you're on an exponential and you do nothing to stop it, it keeps on growing. And what also I was sharing was the research that many people have been doing over the years within the entire pandemic space. Here is Bill Gates, and there's an article here which is about the steps he was taking and the way he was taking those steps for many years before we actually got to where we are today. And there's also an article here, how long the crisis will last and how to prepare for it, where I was already sharing that we should be at least expecting 3 months when we are going to be in the kind of lockdown we're in right now. And of course, that was at the time when the US government was saying, hey, it's going to be 2 weeks, we're going to be open by Easter. And of course, they've changed that now as well.
Ultimately, the goal is to ease the guidelines and open things up to very large sections of our country as we near the end of our historic battle with the invisible enemy. It'll go on for a while, but we win. We'll win. I said earlier today that I hope we can do this by Easter. I think that would be a great thing for our country, and we're all working very hard to make that a reality.
Now, this doesn't mean that I am some futurist that gets it all right. It's just that I have a fairly good bet, having thought about the future a lot, as to what's going to happen to us economically and what the structures are that take place, plus what's happened in the past, that if you actually start following these tracks, gives you a pretty good idea on where things are most likely to go in the future. Like, there's nothing which is fully guaranteed, but way better to plan for the worst and then to hope for the best. My experience of every great entrepreneur is a great entrepreneur is always planning for the worst and then expects the best, whereas every failed entrepreneur is always planning for the best and then ends up with the worst. So listen in to these 3 different things I'm going to share with you, and then from there decide what action you're going to take. Subscribe to this channel so that you can actually follow along on the pathway, because we're in this journey for some period of time to come. And also do have a look at my Facebook page so you can actually be part of that as well. All of the different pages that I'm sharing here, I'll drop in the links down below as well, so you can kind of just go refer and follow along there too. Let me also say that since I have been sharing this to our community, because we have over 1 million entrepreneurs all around the world that are part of our community, we have been running a number of webinars, Facebook Lives. They've all been attracting in the region of 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people that are all looking for the best information right now to help them and support them as well. So let's go on this journey together. Number 1, what is the first thing that I can share with you that is something which you may not have heard in the same way I'm about to share it? This is going to be bigger and last longer than what any of the media is actually saying right now. And the reason I say that is because the current thing that's happening is not the big thing. If you go back to 2004, at the time of the Asian tsunami, when the tsunami came, the tsunami was like 2.5 meters high. Now, 2.5 meters is higher than me. So that's a big wave, and it comes with force. And when this first wave came, everyone who was on the beach, some got washed away already, but the vast majority were able to run up and actually be able to actually miss getting washed away. And even the ones that did get catched were actually able to get out of it and get back to land. They thought that was the wave. But then what happened after that was 5 minutes later. 5 minutes is a lifetime when you just had a massive impact from nature. An entire 5 minutes later, when the water went right out and people go, wow, weird stuff is happening, the second wave came. The second wave was 10 times higher. It was at times up to 30 meters high, and it was about 10 times higher than that first wave. And then there was a third wave after that as well. Nature works in waves. If you go, and it was actually the second and third waves which did all the damage. If people had actually noticed that the first wave was just a warning, they would have done something about it. The Spanish flu in 1918, the first wave came in March of 1918. The first wave, when it came, everyone thought that was it. And by the time it came to the summer, that wave had gone. And so everyone's like, okay, back to usual. But then what happened was a second wave came, and that's the one that did all the damage. There was a new strain which came out of England. The first one came out of America, the second one came out of England. And the new strain that came out, it then reinfected and it came back, and everyone was caught unprepared. And that was the one that went massive. In fact, I'll show you a link to a really great article. This one here is from National Geographic, which actually explains the 3 waves that took place and actually killed 50 million to 100 million people, with 500 million infected out of 1.5 billion people on the planet. It was a third of the entire planet. But the first wave actually is about the same as what's happening in the world today. We're like, wow, it's going to actually be having an impact on like millions or all of us. But it's actually, in terms of the deaths, going to be only a small number of deaths in proportion to 7.5 billion people, even though it's a huge amount of deaths in terms of any natural disaster we've had. But this is potentially just the first wave. The second and the third wave in the Spanish flu, as people started going through the process of trying to figure out how they were going to actually manage this, they themselves went through a number of waves too. In fact, there's a graph here which shows all of the different states and cities in the US and what happened as some of them did nothing and ended up with massive amounts of deaths, how some of them actually did a good job but then closed up, and then a second wave came and they had to suddenly put on new restraints again. Same thing is already happening in Asia, where we're seeing the likes of Singapore, China, who believe they have things under control. And then they realize they've got to actually clamp down even harder the second time to make sure it doesn't reinfect. And so as a result of that, we can expect, because in the West, we haven't had anything like the same measures that have happened in places like Singapore, places like China, that this whole peak and trough that we're going to see is going to last us at least, as I've said here, for 3 or 4 months. But after that, we're going to have one of two things happen. Either we're going to have another crisis in terms of a virus wave, which is going to be unchecked, which I don't think is going to happen. And if that happens, a lot more people are going to die. Or what is much more likely is that governments are going to say, look, we're going to actually have to keep on closing our airports or to stop flights, because as long as there's somewhere in the world that can come in and reinfect us again, then it's going to end up in exactly the same situation. So we're going to end up with international travel, hospitality, tourism being the first to see massive impact. We're also going to see the second part of that, which is even if we can leave our homes and actually go out and create our own communities again, we're going to see all around the world the ability for countries to actually trade with each other effectively, do business with each other effectively, is going to be permanently changed because we are going to see this shift in borders and how we're actually closing down borders to actually ensure that we're actually able to save our economies. And a lot of the economies that we're actually seeing at the moment are going to fall as well. And that kind of leads me on to the second of the predictions. First prediction is going to be much bigger in terms of the impact it's going to have, the number of deaths that we're going to see, and then more importantly, after that, the number of a long-lasting effect we're going to have from a second and third wave, whether it's going to be the health wave or whether it's going to be the economic wave. And then the second part is that we are going to see, as a result of the economic waves that are going to take place, the collapse that's about to happen, we are going to see a breakdown in governments themselves. So I know that sounds very dramatic, right? But it's not the first time we've talked about things like the dollar crashing. I'm not a pessimist, by the way, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm an entrepreneur, and I spend my time looking at what are the trends taking place around the world. One of our businesses, Entrepreneur Resorts, we have got resorts around the world in places like South Africa on safari, in Bali, in the Czech Republic for skiing. All these resorts have all closed down right now. And so, of course, I'm there thinking, okay, when are we actually going to open up? And we had a conversation with the team where I was like, look, even if they actually open up, you get leaving your house, which at the moment you can't do if you're in lockdown in South Africa or in Australia or in Indonesia right now, or Czech Republic, which is the first to close down. But even if you can actually get out and actually go to a resort, the vast majority of people who are actually wanting to go to a resort are people that are going to fly from overseas. And it's going to be many months later before you're going to have airports opening up. Even if most of the world is recovered, there's still going to be some hotspots where people can still fly back in from there. So they're still going to be having serious controls, and you might have 14-day quarantines, which is what in Asia they're putting in place right now. Biggest challenge with that is that no one's going to come for a holiday if they have to be in quarantine for 14 days before they go to the holiday. And so because of that, we're actually going to be seeing already within our own business, these resorts being closed potentially for at least 12 months, if not longer. And we're having to plan for that and manage that as a result of that first prediction. Second part, which is why would we say that actually can't government just print money? Isn't that what they're doing right now? There are these different articles at the moment. And again, I'll put you the links down below. This one here, I'm sure you've seen, coronavirus job losses could total 47 million. This is just in the US, where already we've hit 3.3 million at the time when I was recording this, but job figures out this week. I'm sure it's going to go up much, much higher than that. But this is 30%, 32% of the entire workforce. We're seeing this happen all around the world right now. This is not just America. When you take a third of the workforce and you put them out of work, how long are you going to be paying their salaries or giving aid to the kind of companies that are going to employ them before the company said, we've got other costs as well that are not being covered? It's just a matter of time before we see many companies, including many large companies, that have no choice but to shut down. And then the house of cards starts to fall. So this is going to be happening over this next year. And this is all starting from the first of the predictions, which is that this is going to last longer than we think. It means that we're going to have irreparable damage to our economies. In 1919, there was the Spanish flu. 10 years later, in 1929, we had the stock market crash in America, which led to 10 years of the Great Depression. And during those 10 years, during the Great Depression, we had like up to 50% unemployment. You've got the first base. The way economics basically works, as I know many of you know, is that the first base of what you're actually turning into value is time itself, it's labor. So everyone's at work, they're working, and the first thing is like, how do I work with you? How do you work with me in such a way that I can give you value, you can give value to me as well? And if you do that well, provided that first base is working, the second base above that is your products and services, where people are now saying, okay, I'll use some of your labor, but you've got a brand, you've got a product, just send the product to me, right? That's where the value is going to be. But that all is based on there being labor to begin with. And if you actually have labor stop, well, then of course the products and services stop as well. And there's already challenges. Like right now, there are stories coming out of America about food shortages already. There are supply chain challenges here in Europe as well, where if people aren't actually shipping the food to you, if they're not actually in the factories making the food or in the farms making the food, because this gets so bad, then of course the entire supply chain breaks down as well. However, a lot of the supply chain is services, right? Things like going to a hotel, going to a restaurant. If we are closed for 4, 5, 6 months as a result, or even when we open, but we're relying on those flights coming in to fill up our businesses, those businesses will go bust. And the government's not going to keep on just paying the money out to those businesses indefinitely. But more importantly, above the businesses, above the products and services becomes the next level, which are the assets, like the actual shopping malls, the buildings, right? Who's paying the rent? It's always going to be those officers and the employees who actually are getting the cash, who are actually paying for all those assets. And if you have got an entire banking system which are sitting on assets that are requiring a cash flow, which are coming from all that productivity, and you stop the productivity, then it takes a whole lot longer for you to actually get back up. So the models that at the moment the governments are quoting are models like, for example, 2008, when frankly, at the economic level, we were still out there producing. You know, there was still there wasn't very high unemployment. It was high compared to normal. It's like it went from 200,000 per month up to more like 670,000 per month in America. But that's gone up to already 3.3 billion. That's the number here talking about 47 million. And so that would be a model where you say, well, like things can already if it's a banking crisis, things can already get back to normal as long as people keep working. Or what happened, for example, with Katrina, where you've actually got New Orleans that actually ends up underwater. And so it's like, look how, like, it's got big unemployment, but look what happens the moment we actually get everyone back in a year later, then all the businesses start up again. So as long as we support them in the meantime, well, all those people had somewhere to go. They all had the ability to carry on work somewhere else. The businesses were able to maintain themselves and then come back in again because they didn't have all those costs. And of course, the people running those businesses figured out ways, because they had support from the rest of the country, to be able to come in and actually start again. We do not have that when we're actually cutting out labor out on a global scale. And so we are most likely to see, first of all, a breakdown. In fact, you can already see out here the likes of the US housing bubble 2.0, why it's about to burst. This is an article from Forbes magazine, which just came out. We've got here an article here, 5 economists who say the recession will be the next Great Depression. I mean, there's no shortage of these kind of articles out there, but most of us aren't even looking at these articles because we're really busy just trying to figure out how to get by today, or more importantly, how to flatten the curve without thinking, well, what happens after we've flattened the curve? Like, where do we then go with our businesses? But don't worry, by the way, it's not all doom and gloom. I'll share with you at the end what you can do about it. This one here, Deutsche Bank strategists warn of hyperinflation generated by anti-coronavirus policies. I mean, obviously, if you have a government or governments that keep on just printing money, it's simply a matter of time before you have massive hyperinflation and those currencies start losing massive value as well, especially in relation to other countries like China, where they've actually got things back under control because of the way they actually manage things with the police state, that they have the ability to actually be able to get everyone back to work quickly, stamp out something like a virus by just ordering everyone to stay at home. And as a result of what they've done, they already are seeing a bounce back. And when you've got a stable economy that's not printing money like crazy, Singapore is another example, while other ones are, then that relative difference is what's going to actually totally shift the balance in terms of where value really is all around the world as well. So what does this really mean when you actually start losing trust in the institutions that are the ones that are supporting us, given that they relied to begin with on our labor and we can't work? And even if we start working, we can't actually get the same level we could get to before because we're expecting a global economy to support us, and that global economy isn't there anymore. And the answer is you get to the third prediction. And the third prediction is that we are going to be moving into an entirely new era of microeconomies. Now, this is not something which is new. There have been people already talking about it just being a matter of time, that if you actually have gone past the institute of big or the concepts of big companies going on to big government, and things start to break down, that you go from the economies of scale to the economies of speed, that you break down into smaller economies again. During the Great Depression, this is exactly what happened, where there was no way to get a job, there was no way to get US dollars, there was no one to trade with, and you had these communities that all got together thinking, guys, we're all here, we all are valuable, we're all suffering because we don't have money, we don't have food, let's just do something together. And what they did is they created their own microcurrencies, where they basically said, let's have our own money that we're actually going to just produce for ourselves, and we're going to trust within that money. Let's barter with each other. So, you got food, you got services, you got transport. Let's barter with each other, use the money we've actually created to do that. Let's make sure this money is not money which is earning interest, which means there's no incentive for everyone to just hold on to it, but it's actually over time costing to hold, which means that we actually make sure that we spend it, because if we don't, it's actually going to be worth less at the end of the year or at the end of the month. And so because of that, we want to sell it with each other. Everyone then starts actually trading the money with each other. What can I buy from you? What can you buy from me? Supporting each other because they're doing it for the right reasons, which is to actually create an economy which actually allows them to grow together. And then from there, allowing them then to be able to evolve and grow as a community as well. You're going to see this happen more and more. And we're going to see this where economies are starting to get created. The tools that enable us to trade with each other are going to be growing, where we're not going to need to wait for governments, or we're not going to need to wait for large institutions to actually tell us what to do. We're just going to get out there and make things happen, because what other choice do we have? And we're already seeing this in different ways online. Some of these will be digital currencies, some of these will be physical currencies, but all of them will have one thing in common, which is that they've got a trusted circle, a community that are actually coming together to make these work as well. One of the things that in our community, and I highly recommend if you have a chance to actually follow through on some of the initiatives that we're taking, one of the things that we're doing along the way towards our IPO, because we're still planning on an IPO, we're still planning on the path that we're going to be going forward, and we're going through an acquisition phase where we're actually looking at the companies we can bring together to create education for entrepreneurs as well, and really make sure that this entire crisis is leading to what the world really needs right now, which is a revolution in education, that we actually can be learning how we can go about creating a job instead of getting a job, because all those jobs that we just went out to get are no longer there in the same way anymore. But if you're sitting at home and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I create value from home? There are ways to set up a digital business. There's ways to connect with people around the world who actually need your value. And we're going through those in the different programs we're running right now. And there is one program that we're running, which is all part of something called Co-Win 2020. This is a free group that you can find on Facebook, by the way. Co-Win 2020, just Google it, Co-Win as opposed to COVID-19. Co-Win 2020 is about how do we actually collaborate together to really make sure that we are using what is a tragic moment right now in history as also the birth of a new future, which is the kind of future we'd all want to have as well. And in this, we actually have got a program that we're actually running. So I'll share with you how it goes. As we grow it, we're creating our own private economy with our own digital currency, which is called Genie Coins, with a way that we actually are working with each other. Everyone actually puts in their products and then trades with each other every week and actually makes sure that they're getting the money that they need, while also going out and actually helping other people with the services that they have. People are shipping products to each other. People are actually helping each other to get online or to find a job. And so all of this is about how we get to help ourselves without needing everyone else to help us. And the last thing you want to do is to get free handouts where it's actually going to drop governments. Not to say don't go and get whatever the government's offering to you right now on the basis that they're offering it, but don't expect that to be the solution, because this is the time right now to be thinking about what happens after that ends. If we still have got this crisis continuing, if the first wave is gone and the second wave is about to come. So with that, I do hope that there has been some good info in there. As we go through the coming weeks, stay tuned, because I'm going to be sharing the structure of what it is. This here is actually the Trusted Buyers Club and the steps we're taking to actually build up our private economy. I'm going to be sharing with you exactly how it's going, what we're doing to ensure that we are making sure everyone within our global community are finding the solutions that they need to be able to actually be a leader in this crisis, right? Crisis leadership is what we need right now. Those that are ready to actually take, not crisis management, which is all about just managing reactively, but crisis leadership, which is actually being proactive about what this opportunity gives us to lead ourselves to something much better. And on the basis of all of this, I hope I've inspired you in some way, as well as actually given a bit of a reality check of where we're really heading. Stay tuned, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll catch up with you on the next video.